Discover 9 spine-chilling and sinister true horror stories from Haunted Appalachia. Fear Files. Amy stepped back into her trailer in the mountains of West Virginia, the heat of another grueling shift at the diner clinging to her like a second skin. Each creak of the old floorboards felt amplified, a sinister reminder that the night awaited her. She dropped her keys on the kitchen counter, the jingle echoed in the small space, mocking her tired spirit. Outside, the oppressive summer air hung heavy, wrapping around the trailer like a dirty blanket. Shadows danced around her as flickering lights cast disquieting shapes, turning her familiar home into an unsettling gallery of horrors. A scratching noise from outside sent a chill clawing up her spine, and she held her breath, straining to listen. What she wouldn't give for a moment of peace. Just the wind, she murmured to herself. But deep down, something twisted in her gut, the unease gnawing at her like an insatiable beast. Ominous phrases, etched hastily into the wooden rail of her porch, surfaced in her mind. Was she really alone? The words slithered into her thoughts like a dark secret she was unwilling to confront. The next morning, the sun filtered through the trees, casting eerie shadows across her path as she approached the local sheriff, hoping for help. Just some bad kids, Amy, he laughed, brushing her worries aside. But his flickering gaze told another story, one she didn't dare explore. They had always been close in Pine Hollow, a community woven tight with trust, yet doubt crept in with the morning fog, and her friends' faces grew pale when she shared her fears. Have you heard about the Wraith? One neighbor whispered, eyes wide with terror. It feeds on secrets, thrives on fear, another added, trembling. Her heart sunk. Was this folklore meant to scare children now haunting her dreams? The community had always held dark corners, but now they felt suffocating, stretching beyond the trees and into her thoughts. As days and nights intertwined, the strange occurrences escalated, whispers danced around her, shadows loomed larger, and soon the very air seemed charged with an energy that left her breathless. A neighbor she had trusted morphed into something grotesque, stalking her movements. Panic clawed at her throat as she recognized familiar faces slipping into cold, calculating masks. She was trapped, her sanctuary transforming into a cage made of fear and betrayal. Deep in the woods, she knew the Wraith had awakened, its hunger insatiable, its eyes ever watchful. And as she fought to unravel the threads of danger tightening around her heart, she stumbled upon traps laid in silence, a betrayal sharper than knife edges. The realization hit hard, a cold wave washing over her. This was no mere folklore. Trust was a delusion here, a mask hiding the true darkness festering in Pine Hollow. Just when she thought the dawn would bring clarity, she heard that familiar scratching again outside, closer now, more frenetic. She turned, spine prickling, and faced the gnarled shadows creeping toward her. Her body trembled, as a breath tickled the back of her neck, sending icy shivers down her spine. A whisper grazed her ears, we know your secrets. She could almost taste the terror, an all-consuming dread that left her gasping for breath. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As she prepared to flee, a weight pressed down on her heart. Each step forward felt like a step toward the maw of the Wraith, a hungry whisper lurking just outside the light. The trees closed in, the familiar landscape twisting into a haunting maze of dread. Every breath she took tasted of smoke and despair. Would she escape, or was this the moment when the darkness would finally engulf her whole? With her courage wavering, Amy pressed on, knowing that the hardest truth awaited her, lurking just beyond the grasp of the dawn. The night deepened around Amy, the forest closing in like a tight fist. Each rustle of leaves felt like fingers digging into her flesh, pulling her back toward the shadows she desperately wanted to escape. She ran, her legs a blur, heart pounding like a war drum, drowning out the whispers that suffocated her sanity. Just keep moving, she urged herself. You can't let it catch you. But the weight of those words felt heavy, almost absurd, as though the truth was already written in the starless sky above. The woods were alive with unseen eyes, each glimmering gaze drawing nearer, and every breath she took came laced with the stench of decay. A low growl resonated from somewhere behind her, reverberating in her bones. Amy dared a glance over her shoulder. The darkness seemed to shift, contorting into the grotesque shape of what could only be the Wraith, a silhouette against the trees, its jagged edges brimming with malice, its breath a cold reminder of the secrets it fed upon. Panic surged wildly through her, propelling her forward even faster. She burst into a clearing, moonlight spilling like silver across the ground. The stark brightness momentarily banished the night's horrors, offering a sliver of hope. She stumbled to a halt, dizzy from the chase, mind racing. Where to go? Where was safe? A faint echo of laughter pierced the stillness. Not her own but familiar. It was the sound of her neighbors, voices twisted with cruel amusement. Teasing. Reading her every fear like a dark scripture. Were they watching? Were they part of this nightmare that now enveloped her? Amy stepped back as dread seeped into her veins. A twinge of guilt tangled with her terror. Could they know her secrets? Could they have called upon the Wraith to punish her? She had never intended to harm anyone, but the whispers they wove a tale of betrayal that itched beneath her skin. She glanced back, feeling the oppressive gaze of the woods behind her. What could she do? Spinning around, she searched for some kind of refuge, some sign of safety. Her gaze landed on a dilapidated cabin at the edge of the clearing, its outline half-eaten by weeds and neglect. A flicker of light came from within, casting an eerie glow, its luminescence both inviting and foreboding. Running toward the cabin, she grasped the doorknob, trembling fingers finding cold metal. The door creaked open, protesting against years of neglect. Inside, an acrid scent filled the air, burnt wood and something unidentifiable, as if the spirits of those who had passed lingered here. As she stepped inside, the floorboards groaned under her weight. Shadows lurked, waiting tantalizingly close yet retreating to the corners, as if her presence disrupted their long-held silence. Amy's heart raced as she scanned the room for anything that might give her an edge, a weapon, a sign of life, something. A flicker further inside caught her eye. A figure, just beyond the threshold of weak light, swayed gently, as if entranced by her fear. "We know your secrets," the voice echoed again, sultry yet commanding. The words curled around her like smoke, and she felt the hot breath of the Wraith drawing closer. Her mind screamed to run again, but curiosity nagged at her. What if this figure was the key? What if they could help her break the grasping chains of fear tightening around her? In that split second, clarity flashed. Her secrets, her neighbors, the Wraith, it was all linked, entwined like roots beneath the earth. However, stepping closer meant inviting danger even further. The shadows loomed, deepening, pressing in as the unknown figure realized she stood before them. "Do you truly want to know what you've awakened?" they rasped. Amy hesitated, heart in her throat. With no way back and no clearer path ahead, she braced herself for the answers that could consume her whole. Would she find redemption, or was she merely stepping into the next layer of darkness? As the air thickened, thick with dread, a new whisper fluttered through the cabin: "The Wraith is not the only huntress in these woods." Amy's breath hitched in her throat as she locked eyes with the figure swaying just beyond the light. Their face was obscured by a curtain of dark hair, but the glint of something sharp shone where their fingers twitched. The air turned frigid, wrapping around her like a vice, squeezing out any lingering hope. "Who are you?" she croaked, the words barely escaping her lips. The figure regarded her with an unsettling smile, one that twisted at the corners like a finer line of black against white. "A friend, a guide, perhaps. Or the last thing you'll ever see." Their voice dripped with a syrupy sweetness that made the hairs on Amy's arm stand up. More terrifying than any growl from the woods, she took a tentative step back, but the silence of the cabin threatened to draw her further in. The whispers danced in her ears, a cacophony of haunted laughter that made her dizzy. "What do you know?" she asked, forcing the words out, her body trembling under the weight of anxiety. The figure straightened, suddenly radiating an aura of command. "Everything. About you. About the Wraith. About the darkness that breathes beneath every crevice in this forest. Amy's heart raced. Had the neighbors put them up to this? Or worse, was this figure another minion of the Wraith? Why should I trust you? She managed to say. You're just as much a part of this nightmare. Am I? The figure stepped closer, their form elongating in the flickering light. Or have I come to release you from its vicious grasp? You need answers, Amy. The Wraith demands blood, but so do your neighbors. Secrets have consequences, and the woods are hungry for you. The floor creaked ominously as Amy swayed between fear and desperation, every instinct telling her to flee. Yet part of her curled around the figure's words. What do I need to do? Embrace it, the figure whispered, eyes glimmering with something akin to delight. Your secrets are your power. You've already awakened the darkness, don't waste it. The shadows behind them thickened, like a storm brewing on the horizon. A sense of urgency gnawed at her. Every nerve screamed to bolt from this cursed space, but denying the darkness felt like piercing a balloon full of air. Tell me. In the heart of this forest lies an old well, the figure stated, voice drawing tight. It feeds the Wraith. If you wish to reclaim what's lost, you must offer something in return. There was a pause, a careful silence pregnant with understanding. Your truth. The very nature of the woods shifted, distorting her surroundings. Amy felt it, a tugging at her core, shadows sliding closer, audibly raking against her thoughts. What if my truth is unredeemable? A malicious grin curled the figure's lips again, a grotesque echo of allure. True redemption doesn't come from light, Amy. It comes from embracing the darkness inside you. Are you willing to find out how deep it runs? No, she whispered, terror spiraling violently within her. Then run, they replied, voice softening, almost taunting. But you'll find the truth waits for no one. A sudden crash shook the cabin, rattling the frame and sending dust dancing in the air. The Wraith's growl surged, an unholy roar igniting the shadows beyond. Amy's heart plunged. One option remained, flee or embrace what she had become. As the walls felt like they were closing in, she spun toward the door, breath hitching. But with every step towards the threshold, she could feel the weight of her secrets warming at her back, whispering for her to turn around. The darkness tightened its grip, and a chilling realization hit her: the Wraith was not just hunting her, it was summoning her. Would the truth unveil a path to salvation, or damn her to the fate worse than death that loomed just outside? As she shot through the cabin's door, barely escaping the cloaked figure behind her, one thing was clear: the woods weren't just alive, they were watching. And Amy sensed it wasn't only the Wraith pursuing her anymore. Something worse lurked, waiting to feast on the darkness that had awakened in her. What have I done? She thought, dread creeping up her spine as she sprinted into the enveloping murk. And just when she thought there was no escape, the whispers returned, loud and clear: the hunt is only beginning. The thudding of her heart echoed in her ears as Amy hurtled deeper into the forest. Branches clawed at her clothes, snagging her like the talons of the unseen horrors wrapping around her. She didn't dare look back. The darkness pulsed behind her, almost alive, hungry. The whispers flooded her mind, coiling around her thoughts like smoke, holding her captive in a suffocating embrace. The Wraith had awakened something primal inside her, a darkness that felt familiar yet foreign, an unsettling revelation. What do I do now? She gasped, breathlessly. The trees loomed tall and oppressive, their twisted branches creating a labyrinth that threatened to swallow her whole. Then came the sound of faint, rhythmic tapping that sent ice through her veins. It echoed from all directions. Was it the Wraith? Was it the figure from the cabin? Terror rose within her. She pressed on, breaking into a sprint, every ounce of her will focused on escaping whatever hunted her through the woods. The tapping grew louder. A low, steady rhythm that matched the pounding of her heart. Amy turned sharply, slipping, nearly losing her footing. Perhaps she could hide, trick whatever was chasing her. The woods smelled like damp earth and decaying leaves, a reminder of her mortality. She stumbled into the cover of some overgrown brush, desperate to muffle her breath, her heart thumping so loud she feared it would give her away. She closed her eyes, but the darkness was all-consuming. Darkness pressing against her eyelids felt like a weight. It whispered her secrets back to her, secrets she had buried deep, and all of them shot through her thoughts like arrows. The figure had spoken the truth, her darkest moments were woven into her very being, a part of her essence now. Suddenly, the tapping ceased. Silence enveloped her like a shroud, the kind of silence that made the hairs on the back of her neck prickle. Then, a different sound rose up, the rustling of leaves, like footsteps approaching, frenetic and suspicious. Amy opened her eyes, scanning the shadows. "Please, no," she muttered, panic flooding her limbs. In one fluid motion, she looked behind her. What she saw sent an electric jolt of fear through her. Eyes glinted in the gloom, many eyes like a herd of wolves closing in. They blinked in unison, glimmering with a feral hunger. "Help!" She shrieked, but the sound died on her lips, swallowed by the forest. The eyes widened, rivaling her own terror. She felt their curiosity gnawing, a pack with a single thought. Just as the creatures edged closer, the whispers erupted again, louder this time, drowning out everything. "Unleash what you haven't shared," they chorused, insistent and menacing. "You must speak your truth." "Shut up," she cried out, clutching her head. They encroached upon her slowly, their breaths quickening, a dreadful anticipation crackling in the air. But she hesitated, the pull of the whispers strong against her will. The figure's words echoed, clawing at her mind. "Your truth is your power." What did that even mean? Did she even have the strength to do it? The timber beneath her began to tremble, a warning thrumming through the earth. The eyes darted back, alarmed, retreating into the shadows. Amy took a deep breath, adrenaline coursing through her. This was her moment. "I am more than what you fear," she shouted, the forest holding its breath. The response was instant. A tremor coursed through the trees, forceful and unyielding. The brush around her began to shake, as if the woods themselves reacted to her declaration. The pack of eyes blinked wider, and the whispers rose to a frenzied crescendo, echoing her next words, "I will reclaim what is mine." But just as the shadows recoiled, a bellowing roar erupted from the depths of the forest, the Wraith's voice, deeper and angrier than before. "You cannot escape your fate, Amy." And just like that, the ground beneath her cracked. She stumbled backward, terror cementing her feet to the ground as the very earth split apart. The wells, the darkness, it all twisted together into a churning void that threatened to swallow her whole. Could she truly embrace her truth and wield its power? Or would the darkness consume her and everyone she loved? As the void called to her, the right choice slipped further from reach. This is only the beginning, she thought, gasping for air as she fell into the unknown. Falling. It felt like time elongated as Amy plummeted into the abyss of darkness. The world above faded, light and sound dissolving into a distant memory. She reached out, grasping at nothing, desperately trying to hold on, but the void welcomed her cold and consuming. Her heart raced as fear clawed at her throat, choking back a sob that would echo back up to the surface. Then, abruptly, she landed. Not on the soft earth she had expected, but on a hard surface that jolted her senses. The breath escaped her lungs in a sharp gasp. Her eyes snapped open, adjusting to the dim flicker of a half-lit room around her. Worn wooden walls loomed, seeming to warp and twist in the weak light. The air felt thick and stale. Her pulse continued to drum in her ears, an unsynchronized beat against the sharp sounds that punctuated the silence. She turned her head, eyes darting, searching for what lay close. An eerie sensation prickled up her spine as she noticed a mirror against the far wall, a jagged crack spidering across its surface. "Where am I?" Amy whispered, her voice barely making a ripple in the suffocating stillness. Panic clawed at her throat again, but she forced herself to breathe. As she focused on the mirror, shapes seemed to dance in its depths. Was that a figure? Or just her imagination? She leaned closer, squinting into the reflective glass. The surface rippled like water disturbed by a stone. "Show me," she murmured, half hoping, half fearful for any answer. The whispers returned, murmuring her name like an ominous lullaby. "Amy, Amy." Then the shadows shifted, and a face emerged from the depths, a face that was unmistakably hers, but twisted, scarred, like a grotesque reflection from a nightmare. Her breath hitched in her chest as the figure smiled, full of malice, agony etched on its features. "Your truth lies within," it hissed, its voice a haunting echo of her own. "You must feed the darkness to find your light." She staggered back, the memory of the forest flooding her mind. They had been chasing her, the pack of eyes, the wraith, and now, she was trapped in this claustrophobic space. No. She pressed her palms to her ears, trying to drown out the burgeoning cacophony. The whispers grew louder, sharper, overlapping her thoughts. "You can't have me." But deep down, in the shadows of her heart, a flicker of truth lingered. She hated the truth. Facing it meant pain, meant wielding power she was afraid to embrace. A truth she had hidden for too long, her guilt, her anger, the dark secrets of her past. As if sensing her hesitation, the mirror shimmered, urging her to look again. Her twisted reflection smirked back, "Embrace me. You know you want to." In that moment, the ground began to tremble again, a vibration of unrest that resonated through her bones. The mirror cracked even more, splintering with the sound of shattering glass, each fracture pulling her closer to the edge. She had to choose. With a surge of newfound determination, Amy stepped forward. "I will not be afraid. I will unite with my truth." But as she shouted those words, the darkness erupted around her, shrieking with fury. The mirror exploded, shards flying in all directions like jagged raindrops that eye in the chaos. She caught a glimpse of what lay behind the eyes, endless, ravenous eyes staring back at her from the other side. The pack was waiting. "Your truth is your only escape, Amy," echoed the cacophony as the darkness closed in, wrapping around her like a shroud. With no other choice, she plunged into the swirling void, ready to confront the turmoil within. As she descended, the promise of the unknown loomed ahead, freedom or doom, what awaited her on the other side of her truth. In the distance, the wraith's laughter reverberated, chilling her to the bone. "You think you can survive? Your fate has just begun to unfold." The plunge felt endless. Amy was submerged in darkness, spiraling through an intimate nightmare, her heartbeat echoing in her ears like a war drum. The whispers faded, replaced by a distant, slow thrum that vibrated in the pit of her stomach. It was rhythmic, almost heartbeat-like, as though something monstrous awaited her descent. Suddenly, Amy burst through a threshold, landing on hard ground once again. She gasped, the cold air slicing into her lungs. As her eyes adjusted, she realized she was not alone. A dimly lit corridor stretched before her, walls lined with twisted shadows that seemed to breathe with her. The air was heavier here, thick with an otherworldly scent, rusted metal and damp earth. Panic flared anew. She took a step forward, then another, her feet scuffing against the uneven floor. Echoes of her movement rippled out, swallowed by the pervasive silence. The sound hung uneasily, as if the very corridor was listening. The temptation to turn back pricked at her, but something pushed her on, an eerie sense of purpose binding her to this dark path. "Find the light, Amy," a voice echoed in her mind, a command laced with a chilling familiarity. It was her reflection's taunt, echoing through the shadowy expanse almost in mockery of her resolve. "Face your truth." Dread knotted in her stomach as she approached flickering lights ahead, forming a doorway that loomed like an open maw. She hesitated, the threshold pulsing with a soft glow of false promise. With a shove of renewed courage, she crossed into the light. Inside, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The stench of decay replaced the murkiness of the corridor, and the walls were draped in ghastly photographs, each frame capturing expressions of terror and despair. Faces that looked like hers gawked back from the pictures, mouths open in silent screams. Clutching her throat, Amy fought the surge of nausea. "What is this?" she muttered, grappling with the grotesque art of her past. Each photograph ignited a different memory, tattered and frank, like faded emotions replaying in her mind. Moments of cruelty, anguish. She was both the victim and the perpetrator in these scenes. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed above her, drawing her gaze skyward. The ceiling warped, bucking like a swollen belly, plaster crumbling and dust raining down as if the building itself was protesting her presence. Intense shivers gripped her spine, invoking the world outside. The Wraith's laughter wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. "You can't hide, Amy. You're not alone anymore," it hissed, the sound reverberating from every wall. In a moment of clarity, Amy gasped. It was true. The essence of her own darkness had come alive in this space. She had summoned these memories, these horrors. With each revelation, the energy within the room intensified, feeding on her rising terror. "I will not be your puppet," she roared, a defiance rising in her chest. Crippling fear twisted in her gut, but she could feel something else: strength. The door's glow persisted, morphing slowly, beckoning her toward its warmth. She took a step, then another. "I will take control." Each step felt like a small act of rebellion against the twisting dread. But a low rumble quivered beneath her feet, and the floor shook like a beast ready to erupt. The photographs began to shake violently, the faces writhing, the light in the room dimming to a twisted, feral glow. Tendrils of smoke swirled from the frame edges, and ghostly hands reached for her. "Embrace your darkness," they screamed. Amy stumbled back, terror blossoming. The ground quaked and she had to make a choice: confront this monstrous mockery of her truth or flee back into the consuming darkness. Just as the ground began to split beneath her, revealing an abyss of shadows, Amy steeled herself. "I can't back down now," she shouted, lunging toward the door, the light within promising what the darkness concealed. "Your reality awaits," echoed the Wraith, its voice sibilant and mocking. As she hurtled through the door, everything exploded in a burst of light and sound, flinging her into the unknown. Gasping for breath, she could feel the pulse of something powerful envelop her. What would she find on the other side? Would it be salvation or the ultimate test of her darkest fears? The light overwhelmed Amy, a blinding surge that melted the horrors behind her into oblivion. She breathed deeply, her pulse racing as reality reformed around her. When her eyes adjusted, she wasn't in the dim, haunted corridor anymore. She stood in a vast, desolate landscape, an eerie twilight setting bathed in shades of gray. The ground beneath her feet was barren, cracked like an old painting disintegrating under the weight of its own history. Sporadic shapes loomed in the distance, jagged silhouettes reaching out like claws against the fading sky. A chill swept over her, invading her skin not purely from the cold, but a creeping awareness that she was being watched. "Where am I?" she whispered, her voice feeling weak, almost swallowed by the heavy silence. The wind, too, seemed to hold its breath, each gust a cold, mocking exhale. Suddenly, from behind a misshapen stone, a figure appeared. It was an old woman with a gnarled frame, her hair a wild mass of silver tendrils. "You've come," she rasped, voice cracking like dry branches. The woman stepped closer, her eyes sunken yet gleaming with a strange light. "You've finally come to face your own." Amy took a step back, heart pounding. "Who are you?" "A guardian of truths buried here," the woman replied, her gaze weighing the air thick with tension. "Each soul leaves a mark, just as you have, dear child." The revelation sent a shock through Amy. Shadows from her past flared in her mind: the choices, the resentments, the footprints left on others' lives that echoed through time. "I'm not here to hurt anyone," she protested fiercely, the desperation clawing at her throat. "Perhaps. But the Wraith, it thrives on what you deny." The woman's voice dipped to a whisper. "You must confront it. It feeds on fear, not just yours but everyone around you." Panic began to swell anew. Images flashed through her mind: faces of the tormented, the ones she had abandoned or betrayed. "No, I can't." With an abrupt sweep of the old woman's hand, the landscape shifted. The sky darkened, the looming figures morphing into twisted apparitions. each one a forgotten fragment of Amy's past. "You cannot escape the echoes, Amy," the guardian said, her voice growing distant as the ground heaved beneath them. Just ahead, a great maw opened in the earth, swirling with an ominous light, and voices filled Amy's ears, screams layered like a chorus of despair. "You must descend. Only through your darkness can you find the light." "No. I refuse." She clutched her head, the chaos overwhelming her senses. But the ground trembled again, and she felt the pull and inexorable urge to dive into that abyss, but dread anchored her feet. "Stand firm." The old woman was gone, leaving Amy swaying, caught between the abyss and her courage. She closed her eyes, bracing herself against the tide of memories, the laughter, the accusations, the betrayal, and there it was, lurking behind it all, the Wraith, its presence now more palpable than ever. The darkness whispered promises of escape from guilt, yet stared with hungry eyes, urging her inside. "I'll never give in," Amy roared, stepping toward the shadowy mouth. Suddenly, a bright beam of light shot from her chest, illuminating the silhouettes that crowded around not just her fears, but the faces of those she had hurt. Each face stared at her, not in anger, but pleading for forgiveness. "Face them, Amy." The old woman's echo sounded again, resonating through the shadows. With a rush of clarity fueled by immense sorrow and strength, Amy took another step. The Wraith's laughter bubbled around her, but she would not cower. Not anymore. What awaited her? Could she truly reconcile the darkness within, or would she be consumed by it? As she plunged down into the swirling shadows, Amy felt the echoes of her past pushing back, battling for dominance against her will to change. Her heart pounded louder, drowning out the chaos. This was more than a descent, it was a reckoning, an ugly dance with her reality. Would she rise from this confrontation, or would the darkness claim her forever? The sensation of falling seemed to stretch forever, as if time itself had lost its grip in this churning void. Amy squeezed her eyes shut, battling against the fear that threatened to suffocate her. The Wraith's laughter echoed, wrapping around her like icy tendrils, whispering horrifying secrets of the souls that had wandered through the abyss before her. When she finally landed, her knees buckled, scraping against the rough ground. The darkness swirled around her, a living entity pressing in from all directions. She fought the panic that clawed at her throat, forcing herself to breathe, to focus. But the whispering voices and shadows danced tantalizingly close, howling with familiar pain. "Face them." A voice cried, sounding like the old woman, but distant, almost lost among the cacophony. Opening her eyes, Amy found herself in a twisted reflection of her past life. She was standing in a place that felt like home yet distorted, a living nightmare of her own making. The walls warped and pulsated with sorrow, memories squeezed from her mind like thick molasses. Ahead, she saw the faces again. Each one bore the marks of her past, the friend she had betrayed, the partner she had abandoned, the colleague she had undermined. The air thickened with their collective pain, a suffocating weight pressing down on her chest. "Forgive me," she cried out, but her voice was swallowed by the anguish swirling around her. One shadow stepped forward, its outline sharp and biting like ice. It was her best friend, Claire, her face twisted not in rage but in despair. "Why did you leave me, Amy?" The question hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. "I thought I was protecting you," Amy screamed, flailing backward. But the words were hollow, echoing in the darkness with no comfort. Claire's gaze hardened, and the Wraith laughed, a vicious, mocking sound, as if delighted by her unraveling. "Protecting me?" Claire echoed. "You chose yourself. You ran away." The intensity of her words struck Amy like a physical blow, forcing her to grapple with the flood of regret that spilled forth. Tears streamed down her face as she stepped forward, hands shaking. "I can't change the past, but I need to face it to set it free." With a desperate scream, she plunged her hands into the shadows, desperate to pull the truth from its depths. The darkness recoiled, shrieking in rage, but she didn't relent. Images of lost time flickered like old film projections, laughter shared, promises broken, the moments that had led to this very abyss, the wraith shrieked impatiently, its shape shifting and swirling, as if hungry for her despair. You're weak. You will join them. No. I will find the light. Amy shouted, the raw determination surging through her veins. She felt the warmth of her memories flooding back, the moments of joy, kindness, and love interlaced with the pain. With every ounce of strength, she reached deeper into the shadows, grasping for the warmth that lay beneath the sorrow. The shadows wavered, and for an instant, she glimpsed a small, flickering light. It grew, swallowing the dark around her. The screams faded to whispers, fading with the shadows that began to shrink back, but just as her heart began to rise, revealing glimpses of salvation, a chilling presence swept through her. You think you can escape? The wraith's voice was now a guttural growl, monstrous and primal. You can never be free of me. Amy felt its icy fingers closing around her throat, squeezing tighter, threatening to extinguish the light. A glimpse of terror crossed her mind. What if she could never truly confront her own darkness? What if the wraith was right? Suddenly, the light stopped glowing, flickering like a dying flame. Heart racing, Amy gasped for breath, the realization dawning. Every moment she hesitated, the shadows would tighten their grip. Will you succumb? The wraith hissed, its breath a suffocating mist. No. I choose to fight. She screamed, mustering the full force of her will. But amid the turmoil, a shadow darted from the corner of her eye. Something huge moved behind her, larger than any shadow she had faced before. Could she handle the truth it unveiled? Amy turned around, and her breath caught in her throat. Standing there was a colossal figure, draped in darkness, eyes glinting with malevolent delight. Are you ready to join the lost? It whispered, the air growing thick with dread. No, the word barely escaped her trembling lips as a cold sweat dripped down her spine. The fight was far from over. Would she find the courage to face the wraith and embrace her truth, or was she already too late? The colossal figure loomed closer, its shape twisting and shifting like a smoke monster. Amy couldn't tear her eyes away from its penetrating stare. Cold panic settled deep in her bones as the weight of her unresolved past surged to the forefront of her mind. Join the lost, the word slid like ice through the air, wrapping around her throat with a ridicule that was palpable. The shadows cackled, flaring like the flicker of dying embers. You belong with them. No. She shouted, flinging herself backward, her heart racing, thudding in rhythm with the erratic breath escaping her lips. She felt the ground beneath her tremble as the wraith tightened its grasp. The light she had glimpsed before faded like an old photograph exposed to the sun. Behind her, the shadows morphed into twisted, nightmarish figures, each face one she recognized, each expression frozen in fury or despair. Claire stepped forward, her eyes glimmering with tears that mixed with shadows. You need to make a choice, Amy. Stay and embrace the darkness or fight to break free. What kind of choice was this? The fear threatened to drown her, but so did her memories, the laughter, the good times. They warred inside her head, the pain coating her heart like thick tar. I can't. She cried, the words tearing from her throat, raw and desperate. I can't do this alone. Alone. A voice echoed through the chasm, and it wasn't the wraith or Claire. It was familiar and unsettling. You never were. Amy's blood turned to ice. The realization hit her like a tidal wave. Tim. The name brought a rush of confusion and shame. You shouldn't be here. Oh, but I am. His shadowed figure stepped forward, merging with the malevolence surrounding them. You think facing them will save you? You abandoned me just like the rest. Embrace what you've become. Join your companions. No. Amy shouted, fury igniting within her. I want to go back. I came to face the truth. Truth. Tim echoed, his voice dripping with mockery. What truth? That you're nothing without your shadows. That you'll never be free of your guilt. The overwhelming sense of failure clenched around her like a vice. She felt herself sinking into despair. The figures around her reached out with hands that elongated like claws, as the Wraith encircled her, whispering venomous lies. "Fight or die," came the hiss, swirling like fog. Amy's heart raced, panic mixing with a burgeoning defiance. I won't let you win," she screamed, looking into the eyes of her past. She would no longer be a prisoner in this nightmare. Amy forced her feet to move, stepping toward the flickering remnants of light. With each step, she could feel the haze of darkness retreating. It clawed at her, a desperation creeping into the shadows. "Help me," she pleaded, her voice stronger. The faces watched her, some flickered in anger, others in sorrow. With a surge of courage, fueled by the love she had once shared with them, she reached into the shadows again, pulling out memories of laughter, joy, and moments of redemption. The light began to swell around her, overpowering the panic that threatened to consume her, but as the newfound brightness blossomed, the Wraith lunged forward, its form shifting violently, rage splattering in the air around them. "You can't escape your fate." And then, in that fragile moment, a piercing scream erupted, shattering Amy's focus. It wasn't just a sound, it felt like it tore through the very fabric of her soul. She turned to find a new shadow emerging from the void, a figure unlike any other, distorted and menacing, emerging from the swirling darkness. "What have you unleashed?" It howled, a presence so dark that it seemed to absorb the very light that as fear churned in her gut. Amy realized she was far from done. A new battle loomed ahead. Would she have the strength to stand against this relentless darkness, or was she destined to be consumed forever? The air crackled with tension as Amy faced the grotesque figure now looming before her, its form an amalgam of her nightmares. The whispers swelled to a deafening roar, urging her to retreat. "You thought you could conquer your truth, Amy. You've only roused the deeper darkness within." It howled, its voice tearing through the air like a storm. Panic clawed at her insides, but something anchored her feet to the ground. The memories of her past flickered vividly around her. Those haunting moments were no longer solely weights pulling her down. They were pieces of a puzzle she could finally reshape. "You don't own me," she screamed, directing all her fear into her words. The figure twisted, reacting to her defiance. "You think you're strong. But you hide beneath layers of sin cloaked in false courage. Face it." It lunged forward, an embodiment of all her regrets. In that moment of clarity, Amy recalled the soft laughter of her sister, the light in her friend's eyes before their falling out, the moments of joy that colored her life. They crowded close, each one wrapping around her heart, every luminous story filling the dark with purpose. "I am more than my fears," she cried, adrenaline surging through her. "I choose to face them." The figure paused, a ripple of uncertainty crossing its dark features. "What power do you think you hold?" "I harness the power of love and apology. I face my scars, not with sorrow, but with the will to heal." Amy shouted, the words igniting a fire inside her. The air around her shimmered, as that very conviction coalesced into a radiant light. With a scream of raw determination, she extended her hands, summoning the warmth of her cherished memories. Light poured from her, vibrant and vivid, illuminating the darkness swirling around her. The shadowy figure stumbled back, howling in fury as the light inflicted damage on its twisted form. "No! You cannot escape!" it roared, but Amy felt the truth surge brighter. Just as the light exploded into brilliance, she pressed forward, unleashing the weight of her truth, the friendships betrayed, the love lost, the regrets that had shaped her. "This is who I am. I will not hide." With all her might, she unleashed the memories, flashes of heartfelt apologies, moments of kindness she had once given but had let darkness overshadow. Each truth peeled back layers of her soul, bringing life to the shadows around her. The darkness quivered, shrinking as it faced the warmth of her love. The Wraith and the colossal shadow began to merge, their forms deconstructing under the weight of her resolve, their howls mingling into a disarray of confusion. "What are you?" they screeched, fear creeping into their voices. "I am whole. I am free," Amy shouted, energy radiating with every wound she embraced. The shadows, feeling the unbinding light of her truth, writhed before her. No longer shackled by her past, she felt empowered. The darkness roared and clawed for her, but with each sentence, with each fearless step forward, she reclaimed a piece of her soul. As the light surged around her, the figure's screams faltered. "You cannot defeat us." It rasped, a final retreat echoing through the void. "I already have," she declared, feeling her spirit soar high above the remnants of darkness. The shadows twisted and fizzled, their forms breaking apart into nothingness, evaporating under the brightness of her resolve. With one final scream, the Wraith darted toward her, but it was too late. The abyss imploded, drawing every shadow with it. The echoes of her painful past swirled away, no longer tormenting her. Suddenly, the landscape shifted. Amy opened her eyes again, finding herself bathed in the golden hues of dawn. The forest stretched before her, illuminated under the sun's warm embrace. The weight that had clung to her soul was gone. Exhilaration rushed over her. She had faced her darkness, claimed her truth, and emerged whole. The twisted figures of her past no longer loomed over her as tormentors but stood behind her as lessons learned. As she took a step forward, her heart felt lighter. She would take this journey back to Pine Hollow, bearing the warmth of her revelations. No longer a prisoner of fear, she resolved to approach her community with honesty and courage. With a smile breaking through the remnants of shadow, she whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning." And as she turned to walk back, a sense of peace radiated from her, rippling through the woods. With each step, she felt more vibrant, more alive, grounded in the knowledge that her truth, once terrifying, was now a source of strength. This moment and this journey would shape her anew, carrying her into the light, a light empowered by the love she brought back to those around her. Now, dear friend, this is the moment to take action. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss exclusive stories just like this. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Each click helps. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about Amy's journey. I want to hear from you, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this epic conclusion. Let us rise together. Your support is what keeps this channel alive.